Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Victoria Coates, Heritage Foundation. You know, last time Victoria was on, she was great with me, and then I saw her 2 days later on with Maria Bartiromo on Sunday morning, and she was great again. Victoria, good morning. How are you?
Well, good morning, Sid. Congratulations on 10 fantastic years on WABC. This is great.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. You're terrific, too. You really are. And a lot to talk about these days, right? Trump and I... we went into a whole bunch of it yesterday. We can spend an hour just on foreign policy, obviously, but I guess we'll start with Iran. He brought him up. He said, Sid, I got an armada on the way there. Hopefully we don't have to use it. You know, we don't want to have to use it, but it is a big show of strength. So for folks that don't pay a lot of attention, why is the United States sending an armada to Iran?
Yeah, this is a massive buildup, and we're focused very much on the aircraft carrier group, the Abraham Lincoln. I mean, that is more than 5,000 sailors. It's multiple vessels. It's 4.5 square acres. That is the Lincoln herself, of what I refer to as sovereign U.S. territory, wherever President Trump wants to put it. And in this case, he's putting it in the Persian Gulf. And what we know from Operation Midnight Hammer and the 12-day war is the Iranians are essentially defenseless against both Israel and the United States. And so we know the CENTCOM commander, Admiral Bradley Cooper, was in Israel over the weekend consulting with his counterparts. So we're well lashed up there. And the Iranians know all this. And they know they can't do anything. They're threatening, to close the Strait of Hormuz, to bottle up a quarter of the world's energy supply. They're threatening that they're going to strike the Lincoln. They can't. It's ridiculous. And they're in an economic freefall, which we can get into a little bit. They printed 2 quadrillion rials this week to try to prop up their economy. That's where they are. And so the president may not have to strike. This show of force may be enough, and I think that's what he'd like to see, but ultimately that'll be up to the Iranians.
I know Israel shut down their airspace. I have a lot of friends that live in Israel. They were texting me at 3 o'clock in the morning. They just shut down the airspace because of Iran's continuing threats. But, yeah, I kind of feel like they don't have a lot to back it up. They just don't. And we kind of backed them into a corner at this point. This whole thing started, as you point out, the economy and then printing money. This whole thing started as an economic issue for Iran. And, of course, it's blossomed into this. People think maybe World War III, which is ridiculous. Calm down, everybody. Take it easy. But the truth is it started because of their economy, which is in the trash.
It's beyond in the trash. I mean, it's deep in the septic tank at this point. And this is entirely the doing of the Islamic Republic, of the regime. They've got, I believe, the world's 3rd largest proven oil reserves after Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. So this should be a beautiful, it's similar to Venezuela. It should be a beautiful, prosperous, peaceful country. It has great culture, great people, great location, lots of natural resources. And these mullahs, these Islamic theocrats have just run it into the ground. And that's what's different about these protests is they're not about a single issue. In 2009, it was the stolen election. In 2022, it was the murder of Mahsa Amini, the young woman who wouldn't wear her hijab properly. Those are flashpoints that cause this. This is a slow burn that's been coming on, and a lot of it was instigated by President Trump's maximum pressure campaign, of which I was a proud member during the first term. So he really did systemic damage to that economy. And bear in mind, the alternative has always been open to them. He's always said, I want Iran to be prosperous. Yeah. I want to talk. As long as you don't have nuclear weapons, the sky's the limit. They've refused because what their priority is a nuclear weapon to destroy first Israel and then the United States.
Now, I guess, talking about Israel, we moved to phase 2, right? Because the first thing Trump said to me yesterday, start the conversation. We got good news today, Sid. He knows I'm so pro-Israel and strong Jew. And he said, we got that last hostage back. And who could have thunk that would have happened, right? He got them all home. He got the living home. He got the dead home, which, as you know, in Israel is equally as important. I think for the first time in 12 years, there are no hostages of any faith or religion in Gaza. So that means we go to phase 2. Now, I'm not sure how realistic phase 2 is, because I believe that's the phase that requires Hamas to put down their weapons and invite other leadership into that area. But for what it's worth, what a great job getting all the hostages back, and we move forward, yes?
No, this was incredible. The remains of Ran Gvili, who was one of the first to go in, bear in mind, he was literally a first responder on October 7th fighting the terrorists, and they murdered him, and they took his body, and they've held it now for 2.5 years. And President Trump was just a relentless advocate for the hostages, both living and dead, as you said. From the minute he was reelected, he started talking about this on the most forceful terms, and he got it done. Everybody thought it was impossible. The Biden folk just stopped talking about the hostages because for the Biden people, the hostages were an inconvenience. They wanted to get to a ceasefire regardless of these other circumstances. President Trump immediately understood that the hostages had to come back before anything else could be discussed. And so this is a massive achievement. I think, he was just absolutely correct about that. And, we'll see what happens now. At some point, maybe the Palestinians will decide they want to take Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff up on what's being offered to them, which is extraordinary. I mean, just imagine the aid that would pour into Gaza. Imagine the rebuilding that could occur if Hamas would just, as you said, lay down their arms and accept that they're not going to be the government of Gaza. It boggles the imagination how quickly the Europeans would pour billions into the Strip. But that has to be a decision that's on the Palestinians. We can't do it. We can't want this more than they do, which is what the situation has been for the last 50 years. So we'll see what happens.
Victoria Coates, who's terrific, joining me this morning. What's going on with Cuba? I was expecting that would be coming right after Venezuela. There was even memes a couple of weeks ago that Marco Rubio was priming himself to be the next president of Cuba. He was going to run the Dolphins. He was going to be the president of Cuba. He's got 6 jobs already. But on a serious note, what's the situation? Is that near, or has that been pushed back?
No, I think it's definitely part of the calculus that led to the ouster of Maduro in Venezuela. And Secretary Rubio will be up on the Hill today testifying about the Venezuela operation. I'm sure he'll have a lot to say about Cuba. And I think from what I've heard from President Trump, the idea is that they're going to cut off the cheap oil that's been going into Cuba from Venezuela, been sort of the lifeline for the now kind of post-Castro regime. Interestingly, Raul Castro, who's now 94 years young, took power 10 days ago for a brief emergency period. So make no mistake about it, they're still the same old communist Castros as ever. But the president's going to cut off that oil, both by pressuring Venezuela. The Cubans have been cozying up to the Mexicans to try to get some more. He's going to try to cut that off with the fleet that's down there. And again, you're going to have a systematic economic sort of cascading failure in Cuba that they can't solve. But the good news is, and the president was talking about this yesterday in Iowa, we have the whole diaspora of Cuban Americans, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, for example, in our government, as well as private sector folks who can move into Cuba, after, if there is a collapse, and invest. This won't be a heavy lift for the taxpayer, because I think you're going to have private sector folks so eager to develop that beautiful island and make it into a friend to the United States.
2 more, we'll let you run, Victoria. But Trump has said on this show, and many other shows too, but he talked about how, I solved 8 world conflicts. He said, Sid, you're not going to believe this, but the one I thought that would be the easiest was Russia, Ukraine. Putin likes me. I like him, and I can't get it done. He says something to me, and then he hangs up and blows up something. And he found out the same thing about Jacob Fry yesterday, President Trump, and he's going to find out the same thing about Mamdani. He keeps saying nice things about these people. I know this is a different Trump than the first time around. He wants to like these people. He wants to work these things out, but they're bad people. Bottom line is they're bad people. Putin blew up a train in Ukraine today. He killed more people. So Trump keeps saying, I feel pretty good about this. Maybe next month this thing is going to be over, but I don't see Putin doing anything that makes me believe that. What are your thoughts?
No, I don't think Putin's an independent actor here, Sid. I think Putin is taking his marching orders from Beijing, and he can't exist without the economic lifeline that Xi has been providing for him since the beginning of this war. And I think for Chairman Xi, the Ukraine war is terrific. I think that he thinks it's a wonderful way to drain the United States and Europe of resources and money and keep us tied up and not watching him and not watching Taiwan as closely as we might be. So I think, Putin might in the abstract think, I can get a deal with Trump. We may as well wrap this thing up. But Xi's saying, no, I think you should keep going. And so that's where Putin is sort of stuck. Now, I do think it was a really good sign that we had our first trilateral Russia, Ukraine, U.S. meetings over the weekend. That's a good step. Maybe we can build on that. But until Xi decides that this war is too expensive and unpleasant for him,
I think you're right.
I don't think you're going to see movement out of Putin.
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.